Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Before I go into the issues which are subject matter of this press briefing, I want to take this opportunity to announce to you that the MDC is appointed another vice president to fill the vacancy left by Vice President Dr. Kupe. And the person filling the vacancy is Senator Chief Ndlovu from Kai. He is a senator for Matabeleland North, and also he is a businessman doing business in South Africa. He is an educationist by profession. So he will be joining us as the second vice president. The first vice president, of course, is Engineer Mzuri, and so on. So here with me is Engineer Mzuri, the vice president, Senator Morgan Komichi, the national chairperson, the Secretary General, Honorable Paulina Mpariwa, the Treasurer General Tapua Mashakada, Dr. Tapua Mashakada, the presidential spokesperson, Aloyd Damba. We have the Deputy Organizing Secretary, Mr. Rhino Mashaya, a spokesperson of the party, Witness Dube. I don't think I've left anyone. Sorry? Oh, he's hidden somewhere there. Okay, the Secretary for Mobilization, Honorable Tangwara Matimba. This executive briefing comes in the aftermath of the National Standing Committee that we held yesterday. At that National Standing Committee, we received the technical input from our technical staff regarding the deteriorating social, political, and economic situation in our country. And we are here to share with you our analysis, our assessment of the worsening and the deteriorating social, political, and economic situation in our country. The MDC is concerned with the deteriorating situation, socio-economic situation in our country. And number one, we are worried about the level of inflation. The cost of living is astronomically rising with no signs of abating. If you just go to the shops, you will see that the prices are rising at a very alarming rate. And this compared to the income that the people are getting leaves us worried. It means that most of the Zimbabweans are now living below the poverty datum line. The ordinary man in the street is bearing the brunt of this free-falling economy with all its signs that this government has basically failed in the inflation war. The major cause of inflation, of course, is the volatility of the exchange rate. The government doesn't seem to have any practical or workable ways of harnessing this galloping inflation. Our people are suffering. The second problem that we have identified is the exchange rate. The parallel exchange rate, the parallel market exchange rate is now standing at 1:450. As compared to 1:168 of the auction rate. And this rising parallel market rate has created value chain inflationary pressures. The gap between the auction rate and the parallel market rate has widened, clearly articulating our national exchange rate failure. This problem is exacerbated by the corruption at the RBZ auction. In this regard, we have noticed that there is double dipping by favored players at the auction rate. So these people, the people at the auction rate, those who are favored, are in fact double dipping. But our worry is that Zimbabwe is basically 4 exchange rates: the interbank rate, the auction rate, the retail rate, and the parallel market rate. And this is not well for our economy. The third issue we want to talk about is social protection. There is basically absence of social protection in our country. The most graphic portrayal of our failing economy is the degeneration of social protection, which has left many pensioners condemned to receiving poultry tokens that they can barely survive on. We have seen an erosion of the pensions, erosion of the salaries, and the basic collapse of few social safety nets that were available. The social safety nets have no meaning because of inflation. This brings us to the plight of the civil servants. It is common cause that the plight of the civil servants has been worsened by the government payment of salaries in local currency, which is far below, which salaries are far below the poverty bottom line. This has impoverished many civil servants, including nurses and teachers, who in turn have to turn on society for cushions in order to sustain themselves. We call upon the government to pay civil servants in United States dollars. This problem is not only peculiar to civil servants, it goes also to public servants, who include people who are in the security sector, the army, the police, and the prisons, and so on. It also goes to the private sector employees who are being paid in local currency. What that means also is that wage determination in the private sector, particularly wage sector where we have unionized labor, is through collective bargaining, and that collective bargaining has lost all efficacy because of the deteriorating economic situation. Dollarization, which is point number 5. Without equivocation, the market is dollarized, and there is absolutely no need for the government to ignore this fact. Unfortunately, the economy is no longer in the hands of the government because of its intransigence. It has failed to fully move towards dollarization. But yet, by paying some of the salaries for civil servants in US dollars, the government is tacitly accepting the loss of value of the local currency. We need to acknowledge here that there are shops and services that are refusing to accept payment in local currency. And the irony of it is that some of these businesses are owned by people who are in government. Number 6, the level of unemployment. Zimbabwe is one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. The youths, college students, college graduates are roaming the street jobless, and the government is doing nothing in terms of real employment creation, despite its promises that it is going to create jobs. This is a ticking social bomb. So a ticking time bomb, and we are going to witness a lot of social disharmony as a result of this. Zimbabwe has experienced very poor rains in the last season. People are facing starvation. It is critical that the government intervenes in this regard to ensure food security for our people. But we want to caution here that the food distribution must be completely depoliticized, and every Zimbabwean must have access to food, irrespective of place of origin, irrespective of political affiliation. So the government has to make sure that people have enough food. It is also to make sure that that the distribution is fair. We call upon the international community to intervene in this regard and bring their agencies for the usual help that they have given to our people. We are forever grateful. But they also have to make sure that the distribution reach the intended beneficiaries. Our public transport system has basically collapsed. The government has shut out private players And it is very unfortunate that in this day and age of our independence, our people still waste a lot of time waiting for transport. So a lot of productive time is left. And we have seen that the government's monopolization of the public transport system is problematic. The government is failing to provide for adequate transport. But not only is the government failing to provide for adequate transport, in trying to enforce the monopoly, there is a lot of police brutality that has now emerged. There are a lot of human rights abuses that are now happening. Just a few days ago in Mutare, a police officer threw spikes at a moving combi, and I think it resulted in the death of about 6 Zimbabweans. And we have received information of people who are being harassed, commuters who are being harassed by the police. And in enforcing this monopoly again, the police has adopted an omnibus approach. The moment they see more than 4 people in a car, they don't care whether it's family and so on. They are just arresting the drivers. This is contributing to the delays of workers to go to work, and this is contributing to the deterioration of the productivity of these workers. We demand that the transport system, the public transport system, must be made more efficient. The government must acquire more buses. The government must resuscitate the train system so that our commuters get transport. On top of that, the public transport system must be opened to other players, including the players in the private sector. All that we have said is a cause of concern to us as the MDC. We still maintain that the Zimbabwean problems, the problem that Zimbabweans are facing, the socio, political, and economic problems, can be resolved through a system of dialogue. We therefore call upon the government to make sure that there is dialogue. On the area of inflation, we call upon the government to converge an immediate all stakeholders economic summit to find ways of reversing this inflationary environment that has arisen. The purpose of dialogue, ladies and gentlemen, is not, as others have said, in order for us to share executive power with the government. The purpose of dialogue is to make sure that we bring about concrete social, political, and economic reforms. Zimbabwe is bleeding. Zimbabweans are suffering. Of course, one of the causes of inflation are things that are outside the control of government. But there are such as the Russian-Ukraine war. It has had far-reaching consequences to the globe, including this part of the world. But there are things that are within government control. The issue of corruption, the issue of the ability to have a workable system of allocation of foreign currency, the auction system that we have adopted. It must be a workable system, and it must be rid of corruption and favoritism. So there are many things that are within the control of this government that it has failed to do. So because it has failed to do these things, we foresee a deterioration in the economic situation in this country. We see a deterioration, an exacerbation of debilitating poverty and want within this country. And we also foresee the possibility of political disharmony in this country. And we have to arrest this by going back together on the table and deciding the fate of this country together. We call upon this country, we call upon the government, we call upon President Mnangagwa to heed our call for national dialogue to deal with these socio-political and economic problems. I thank you.
Thank you, guys. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. I'm only going to allow 2 rounds of questions. Number one, and last one. Okay, you can answer.
Okay, Samuel Chagawara from Open Fund. Senator Mwonzora, what issues will dialogue address that platforms such as Parliament has failed to address? I've heard yourself specifically and Senator Comich raising pertinent motions in the Senate chamber. So what other issues will dialogue resolve that platforms such as Parliament have failed to work on? And the other question is, as a government in waiting, what would you better in terms of resolving transport challenges?
Okay. Sorry, the second question was transport.
Yeah, transport, yes.
Okay, what would we do? And another question?
Any other question?
Well, when we talk of dialogue, we talk of political parties or organizations that come together to discuss on the basis of equality. And the dialogue we envisage is a dialogue where the ruling party ZANU-PF is equally represented, and the opposition is equally represented, maybe, and also other stakeholders. Now, in the context of your question on Parliament, it is accepted that in this Parliament we have unequal representation. And as a result of this unequal representation, together with the system in Parliament, the system of whipping, there cannot be meaningful dialogue under the current parliamentary system, unless, of course, the government agrees with us to have a parliamentary platform that is made up of equal number of MPs to do the dialogue. This is what we have advocated. But the President Mnangagwa has said that the dialogue must be done under the auspices of the Political Actors Dialogue Forum. And we have written back to say, if that is the case, Poland has to be restructured, and we must have political parties in Parliament platform within Poland. The advantage of that is that it brings legislative ability to Poland. Currently, the Poland is not provided for in the constitution. That's number one. Number two, it does not have legislative ability. So the discussions that happen in Poland sometimes just end there. There is no implementation mechanism of those discussions. But if we introduce a platform for political parties in Parliament, that will introduce a legislative ability. So yes, we would have wanted this to happen in Parliament, just like what happened in COPAC. Under COPAC, we had almost equal representation in the select committee. And the people then negotiate at that level and agree. When you go to Parliament, you are now passing this as a mere formality. If we use the current system of Parliament right now, it is an adversarial system. Those from this side will vote against anything brought by people from this side. So dialogue is not parliamentary debate. Dialogue is when people sit together across the table and negotiate. We negotiate, we would rather negotiate using a smaller committee, whether it's a committee of Parliament or not, or whether it's Poland or not. Having said that, we believe that for dialogue to be meaningful, it must be inclusive, it must be unconditional, and it must be genuine, and it has to be, of course, structured. We need to involve people who are not necessarily in parliament, civil society, churches, and other stakeholders, including labor and business. Already, we have seen churches have written their opinions about dialogue. We have also seen labor doing the same, and a number of private business people talking about the need of dialogue. So our priority will be dialogue via a parliamentary committee, a parliamentary forum established on the basis of equity or equality. If that fails, then Pollard has to be restructured to include a platform for political parties in parliament. This is what we sent to President Mnangagwa on the 6th of January this year. And he has promised to reply to us. And up to now, we are waiting for his reply. So we are disturbed at the slow pace of dialogue. Every political actor in this country is talking about dialogue. It means, therefore, that it is an important thing to do. Redressing the political, the transport system, without going into detail, there are a number of ways of addressing the transport system. Number one is to open public transport system to private players as well. Of course, that does not mean compromising safety. The government can still put its safety regulations and enforce compliance for the private players. This monopoly is not working because the government is not coping with the demand for public transport. So open to private players and put the standards that you need. Number two is for the government to invest in public transport. We have to introduce commuter trains. We have to revolutionize the infrastructure. If you go to Berlin today, if you go or any other city in Europe, you will find the roads are made in such a way that there are commuter trains that use the same road system. We can introduce that. We can also introduce, make sure that we increase the amount of trains that commute between cities and so on. So those are some of the things that we need to do. We need to call for investment within the transport system. And of course, in order for us to attract investment, we have to reduce the country risk factor. We have to make sure that the investors are assured of the security of their investment, and that we create the necessary political environment conducive for investment. I have an economic guru with me, Dr. Mashakada. You may want to add on that.
You have nailed it. So far, you have nailed it. Thank you, President.
VP, on that, you may want to add something.
Yeah, on transport, the real.
You know, he's an engineer. You know. Yes.
On transport, there is real serious need to take all the nodal points where we have high traffic, like Chitumiza Harare, not on Harare. I feel certain nodal points, then you design your system such that there are specific transport models that meet the demand of that system. There's also need to have an internal system that commutes. Say you want to cross town, just crossing town and going around. That shouldn't be difficult because you use the roads as the president has said. But there is no will in government to do this. If you look at the Rhodesian days, they had a system which is similar to Europe. And right now they've taken over Zupco. That could be done if they could invest in that and allow certain pensions and other things to invest, because without savings, reasonable savings that we use to support this transport system is capitalization, we go nowhere. Now, what the president just went through on the economy makes it even more difficult for anyone to come and invest. And going back to the dialogue aspect, it's more to talk about the unfinished business of the political understanding and having a common goal of nationalists to say what do they want to see happening in Zimbabwe. Once we do that, we have a common vision, then we can go down and come back to doing the roads. It won't work alone with the way the government is doing it. It's working solo. If I give you an example of Rwanda governance is that when a party wins an election, the Speaker of Parliament comes from the opposition. Even if there is no opposition, it has to come from someone who is not in the ruling party. Then the Prime Minister is appointed by the President, but is also an outsider. So they advise each other so that they work together. And their councillors are not politicized. So the common agenda of a country is not based on political following only, it's based on a national understanding of delivering the political, social, and economic goods, which brings us back to the crisis of transport. And what the government is doing is it's not treating its citizens properly by making them suffer with arresting everyone when they have even nothing in their pockets. And that should stop. It should stop.
In fact, this brings us to some of the things that we discussed in the National Standing Committee. We are so displeased by the deteriorating social economic situation in this country, the endemic poverty that is there, and the insensitivity of government. While we are pursuing dialogue, we also are looking at other methods of putting pressure on the government, and this includes, of course, peaceful demonstrations. You may hear us in the not so distant future calling for peaceful mass protests against the insensitivity of government. The aim of the peaceful protests is not regime change. The aim is to push government into positive action. So we talked about that, and it is on the table.
Could from Newsday. So you mentioned about peaceful protests. I hear that there's a...
Tabwire, are you related?
Not. Okay.
No, I'd already thought that I was looking at a millionaire. Okay. Yes.
Okay, my question is, you mentioned about peaceful protests that you are saying that to push government maybe to improvise what's happening in Zimbabwe. We hear that there is NASO and the unions, trade unions, they are pushing for a protest in the near future, maybe this week or this coming week. So as a man, so as a political party that advocates for the citizens, do you support that move, or do you condone, or do you agree with the protest that the citizens are advocating this amount?
Okay.
Yeah, Senator Mwonzora, last time that you updated the press, there was talk with regards to a post-mortem. There is a by-election, councillors, I think in Chitungwiza, maybe in Tusape. Is that analysis been taken, and what are you going to do different if you are participating in this election?
Anyone else?
Sasa from ZT. Maybe if you could just give us a brief on the roadmap to the Congress, and maybe talk about if all posts are up for grabs.
What do you want me to say, Sasa? You want me to say the president is out of bounds? No. Okay. The ZINASO and their colleagues who have called for mass protest next week are Zimbabwean people. and they are protected in terms of the Constitution. The Constitution that we wrote, the Constitution that we were party to drafting, gives the Zimbabweans the right to peacefully protest as a way of putting pressure on government. So as long as people are Zimbabweans and as long as people have issues, they have the right to demonstrate. And if the reason for their demonstration is the deterioration in the economic situation, one cannot say that that cause is unreasonable. It is reasonable. So we support the right of every Zimbabwean to exercise their constitutional right, including the right to demonstrate, in order to force the government, as I say, into positive action. I was reading one of the newspapers where they said that the president was unhappy about the rising prices. Well, unfortunately, he is the president, and he must go beyond being unhappy. He has the executive power to do something about it. And we want solutions from him. We don't want lamentations from the president. Because he has the executive power, he has the ministers who are supposed to fix these things. The Minister of Finance, for example, he is the Minister of Transport, he is the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, and he has access to the government fiscus. And most importantly, he has access to human resources who are not necessarily in his government. It is up to him to find a solution to that. And so the government must go beyond merely being displeased. And we have also seen another disturbing aspect of this government, and it is a disease that we call excusitis, giving excuses and blaming other people. And we have seen them talking about economic saboteurs and the need to punish other people and so on. They are the government. They must punish corruption. They are the government. They must arrest those people who are sabotaging the economy. They must not just talk about it. They must deal with that. And on that score, we must strengthen our institutions and make them more independent. Therefore, we must strengthen the Anti-Corruption Commission, we must strengthen the Human Rights Commission and the other commissions, even Z and so on, so that they are more independent and more effective. We have done a post-mortem of the election, of course, and we are participating in the 2 by-elections, of course, and we see whether the interventions that we have instituted are going to be effective. If they are not, we go back to the drawing table. We are going to be involved in a politically iterative process. If we try this and we don't see it working, we try to improve. So we will never boycott an election. We will participate in the election process. But having said that, we are pushing hard that we must have electoral reforms in this country. I saw I think it was in Chitungwiza, there was violence that erupted there. That should be stymied, that violence. And we must have an election system that is free and fair. And the government is duty bound to make sure that it provides for that election atmosphere. Congress, yes, we are going to Congress. And we, as the MDC, are a party that is well established, and it has well established systems, including the systems of leadership determination. We have a constitution, and this constitution says that after every 5 years, we must go to an ordinary Congress for purposes, among other things, to elect our leadership, to design or review policy, and to deal with constitutional issues meant to strengthen our institution and other issues. So the Congress is not there only to elect leaders. It is there to deal with other issues that make this organization grow and so on. So we are going to have this Congress hopefully by the end of June. And yesterday, the standing committee set and reviewed the roadmap that was brought by the national chairman, Senator Komichi, that was putting the Congress on 2 July, which would be the weekend following the end of June. There were a few discussions regarding those things that must be done first before a Congress is held. The Congress that you and me are talking about here is the main Congress. But the main Congress is preceded by smaller congresses. Congresses at ward level, congresses at district level, and congresses at provincial level. And we have said, as the standing committee, that the leadership of the party must be democratically elected at every level. So we are going to have these smaller congresses. Then we end up with the provincial congresses. At the provincial congresses, if we maintain the current system, there will be nominations for leaders of the standing committee, including the presidency. There are positions in terms of the constitution that will be elected positions, and we don't intend to vary the constitution. If we are to vary the constitution, it will not apply on this Congress. It will apply on the next Congress. So we are a democratic party. Every position is up for contest. We are very serious about legitimacy. A president of this party must be an elected individual, elected by the membership. And we are going to give the membership the opportunity to elect their leaders. It is up to the membership, it is up to the individual leaders to decide what positions they want to contest. We see, of course, that the press is taken on itself to announce on behalf of the leaders what they are going to contest for. These leaders are going to make their decisions when the time comes. And it's not even up to them even. The system within the MDC is that you can only be a candidate if you receive a valid nomination. So the leaders don't nominate themselves. It is the provinces that are going to nominate these leaders. And once they are nominated to the various positions, they make their decisions on whether to accept the nomination or not. And at that point in time, that's when they are then entitled to be elected in those positions. So ours is a democratic system. Ours is not a one-man band. Ours is governed by the Constitution. Ours is a democracy. And whoever emerges as the leader at a Congress is the legitimate leader of our party. We don't deal with the leadership in any other way.
I want to comment on the by-election.
The by-election, yes.
I just want to point out something on by-elections. Yes, we have done our introspection. There is need to really look at by-elections as by-elections. There is only 1 year left. The citizens have not much appetite to vote. And we might not get the best barometer by these coming by-elections. And what we've seen is we have to explain ourselves to the community on what has transpired. we remain resolute as MDC, which is the main opposition party, which started in 1999 and never wavered. We are not going to be waved by anything that goes outside the constitutional dictates of MDC. In any country, there are ups and downs. This could be a down, we can go up, but people in a political system have to work towards a winning year. You don't always win. Sometimes you go down, sometimes you go up. So on our introspection and our consultations, we seem to see that there are a few areas we need to work on, and the time has been too short to really get all the corrections done in terms of our discussions with the public. But I can assure you that come 2023, we might have changed the atmosphere and do something different. So by a by-election, I want to say, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a real barometer. And also, I want to plead with you journalists to insist that there is debate. There is no debate on candidates, even to show what they've done. If you go into Harare, I saw some of the councillors whom we've worked with who were so corrupt. They were really caught on corruption, but they were re-elected, which means even the public doesn't know that these people have really done corruption. They don't want to accept that they've done corruption. So our election system is lacking a debate. This is what we talk about: dialogue, understanding that a candidate must be worth the salt of representing people. But a lot of people just go as a group, and that group you don't even know the people, and you say we are going as a group, and you do nothing for the people.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I need to add one thing. Sorry, spokesperson. We are perturbed as the MDC by the statement that was given in the House of Lords by Lord Otis. He is a British Lord, and he sits in the House of Lords. And the Lord Otis uttered something to the effect that the MDCT is sponsored by ZANU-PF. That statement is false, and we condemn it because the dear Lord Otis did not do his research. Had he done his research, he would have noticed that the MDCT is a party that has the second highest number of seats in the Parliament of Zimbabwe as things stand. And he would have known that in Zimbabwe we have a statute called the Political Parties Finances Act, in terms of which political parties access public funds from the taxpayer, sponsored by the taxpayer. And he would have known that that is our only source of funding that we get from government. We have never received anything from ZANU-PF, and to make matters worse, the Lord did not even get his figures right. I am writing to him, to Lord Otis, to correct himself, so that he must correct himself. What he said in the House of Lords is unfair to the MDC. Not only is it unfair, it is malicious. Not only is it malicious, it is false. And it's surprising that Lord Otis worked in Zimbabwe. He ought to do more research. So we are going to write a letter to the Liberal Party to correct what they have done. The MDC is an independent party with a clear vision of its own and a clear vision for Zimbabwe. The fact that we have chosen the politics of rational disputation, the politics of being not unnecessarily confrontational, does not mean that we are an appendage of anybody. We are an independent party, and to Lord Otis, we are going to write the letter. It's something that I'd overlooked when I gave my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we come to the end of the one.